Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. This is the Curiosity Complex. My name is Nat. I'm your host for today and every other day that you decide to listen to this. This is probably one of the most unorganized podcasts on the internet, but here we are. Um, yeah, I've got a fantastic guest on today. I can't wait to talk to him about everything that he does with his incredible animal. So yeah, without further ado, I'll let him introduce himself.
How's it going, everyone? My name's Vince. This is the Life of Zander channel. This is Zander, the Asian water monitor, hanging out with us in the background. I'm in his cage that I built for him. So I've had Zander for 5 years now. He just turned 5 just a week ago.
Yeah,
And when I first got him, he was like that big. So
tiny.
it's been a journey. When I first got Zander, and I started taking pictures on Instagram. It was actually just for me to track his growth. So it's kind of cool to see like how his account evolved over time into more of a one-stop shop for everything Asian water monitor education.
Yeah,
Because that was not its intended purpose in the beginning. It kind of just morphed into that because I didn't think people were going to follow,
yeah,
and they just keep coming. So
yeah,
here we
yeah.
are years later and educating people. And now we're on podcasts. It's pretty cool. Thanks for having us
Awesome.
on.
Yeah, no worries. That's great. Okay, so I did a little thing on Instagram, just kind of really quickly asking people to send me some questions they wanted to know. And I put on the thing, I was like, so what would you ask someone who is a keeper of an Asian water monitor? And I put like a random stock image off Google on there.
Yeah.
And I was like, what would you ask a guy that owns one of these? And I got a number of responses that didn't know what an Asian water monitor was.
That's
Um,
normal. Yeah, that's very normal.
and I was like, okay, fair enough. I didn't maybe explain myself as well as I should have done. So firstly, let's talk about what is he, where he comes from, and all that kind of fun stuff there.
Yeah, for sure. So let me see if it'll let me. Can I turn the camera around on this, or is it only? There we go. There we go. So here's this is Zander. This is what an Asian water monitor looks like. They come from Southeast Asia. They're the second largest lizard in the world behind the Komodo dragon. So the easiest way for me to simply describe what an Asian water monitor is it's a non-lethal Komodo dragon that doesn't get quite as big. And just like a Komodo, they're not necessarily made to be pets, but because you have so many exotic reptile keepers in the world, you end up getting crazy wild animals that get domesticated over time through captive breeding. Horses, super tame guys like Zander, and that takes years of training to do in general. They're super hard animals to take care of.
Yeah.
These really only be considered by expert reptile keepers. And but yeah, so they come from Southeast Asia. They're really popular in the Indonesia, Thailand, Bangkok parts of the world. And it's like, I don't know. You said you're in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know like what's a common animal that you'd see in the wild in the UK, but like where I live, like a rabbit, because I live in the desert, rabbits are all over the place. Coyotes are all over the place. Like that's common for me to see. If I was in Australia, you'd see kangaroos. In Southeast Asia, you're going to see water monitors all over the place. So it's they're cool. I mean, they're very aggressive creatures in the wild. They'll whip people, they'll bite people, they'll steal your food, they'll knock over your trash cans, they'll eat fish. They're strictly carnivorous, so unlike a lot of reptiles that will eat, lettuce, or you can feed them bugs, and that's all they're going to eat. These guys, they only eat meat, so fish, quail, rats, anything they can sink their teeth on, they're going to go for. Snakes, amphibians.
Really?
But
Wow.
lifespan wise, in the wild, it's pretty rare for a water monitor to get over 10 years old. There are definitely reported instances of them getting 15 plus, but in captivity, it's pretty common for them to be over 20 years old to
Wow.
25.
Yeah.
So my goal is to have Zander be 25 years old, because I'm trying to push the limits. If I'm going to care for a really difficult creature like this, I want him to be as old as possible when he kicks the bucket.
Yeah.
And, I'm married. We plan to have kids here in a couple of years. So I'll hopefully have some little kiddos running around riding dragons that you guys see in the background.
No, it's
Andy right now, he's not full grown. We'll turn the camera around again. So he's not full grown. He's from the tip of his nose all the way down to the very end of his tail. He's just under 7 feet.
wow.
So I believe I measured him like a week ago, and he was 6 foot 11 inches. And I think the last time I had the vet come out just to do an annual checkup on him, he was 46 pounds. So a male Asian water monitor, they can get much larger than a female. So they consider that, the term's called dimorphic.
Yeah.
The females will, like a big female will get 6.5 feet. A big male will get to like 8.5, 9 feet.
Oh my God.
And a lot of that's just locality, genetics. Certain litter species grow larger than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty cool. I can tell you some weird things about them. I don't know what kind of things you want to know.
Yeah, we want to know everything. Like you've said a lot of stuff already, which is fantastic. So some of the questions I had were like, is he diurnal or nocturnal? For those that don't know, nocturnal is animals that live. Well, they don't live. They're all living, but they are active at night, and diurnal active in the daytime. So is he predominantly diurnal, or is he kind of nocturnal more often?
He's diurnal. They're not nocturnal creatures. So I have him on a regular sleep cycle. I'm looking at the timer that I have up on the ceiling. He's coming to say hi right now. But yeah, he has a regular sleep cycle. So I think I have him on like 10 to 12 hours of daylight.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing.
But he sleeps at night. When I sleep, he sleeps, and
yeah,
no problem.
Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so we mentioned how big he is. For those that didn't really know about water monitors before, now you do know. These guys are huge, and it's absolutely, like you mentioned, it's absolutely no small thing to just go and start keeping. So how big is the enclosure that he's in right now?
Oh yeah, I can show you. Let's see. Switch the camera around. There we go. So I built this. This is the third enclosure that I built him, because these guys just kept getting bigger and bigger. So
yeah,
from the right wall to the left wall, it's 12 feet long. It's 6 feet deep, and it's 8 feet high. Because I'm actually pretty tall. I'm like 6'4". So
cool.
I needed like a floor to ceiling kind of walk in.
Yeah.
Cage, and this is what I built with my parents. My dad's an electrical and a mechanical engineer, so he did all the electrical work, and my mom and I designed the cage and built it ourselves. So we have there's a couple different aspects of the cage that are required. You got to have a large body of water. This is a 500-gallon aquarium, plywood aquarium we built with a glass wall in the front, just so it's aesthetically pleasing. Got to entertain the Instagram followers, and I like to watch them swim, which is cool.
Yeah.
So that's like the cool down area of the cage, typically going to be in the low 70s. The water itself is just regular temperature. It's not heated or cooled. Then you have the hot side of the cage, which is his basking shelf. And I have three 250 watt heat emitters that run 24/7. So there's no light emitted from these bulbs. It's only heat. And with a 1-inch thick brick underneath it, I can get this entire shelf to like 135 degrees. And which sounds kind of crazy. Most people don't really realize how much heat these guys require, because they get their energy from the sun. They can't regulate their own body temperature. It's the reptile part of them. They're cold-blooded. But that is basically required to get the energy that they need throughout the day to go hunt for food and digest their food properly, so they don't get rot in their stomach, like food rot. And digging, climbing, swimming, just doing what monitors do. They're always exploring. That's why they call them water monitors. They always found them by the water where they're local to in Asia. and they're always monitoring what's going around. They're super, super intelligent creatures. They're one of the smartest reptiles, actually, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big cage. There's a lot of aspects to it. We have, let me turn this around again. So we have, this is just his substrate area. This is where he does a lot of digging. He just likes to explore in there pretty often. And sometimes he'll go in there to cool down as well. The substrate, it's like a mixture of cypress mulch, leaf litter, sphagnum peat moss. It's really kind of dark and moist right now just because I hose it down on a regular basis to get the humidity levels where we need them to. This is like a good example of humidity right now. Like we've got an angle on there, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 70% humidity. Down here, it's a lot more humid.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, so we got all kinds of stuff to help with that. I have live ivy vines are one of the easiest indoor plants to keep. Don't require any natural sunlight. Just a couple more back. I use that for natural sunlight. Just spraying down the substrate. I have to swap out the substrate every couple of months.
Yeah, yeah. So I see you've got humidifiers in there as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So I don't run these all year. I have two. I use filtered water just so they last a long time.
Yeah.
Where I live in the States, oops, I hit that too many times. Where I live in the States, we have really, really hard water. So it messes up the humidifiers and too much calcium builds on them. So we always have to use filtered water. But this just helps in the wintertime. When I'm struggling to keep the humidity levels where I need them, I run these 24/7.
Yeah, yeah.
So that helps a lot. In the summertime, I don't really need it for whatever reason. But
oh, that's really cool. That's so interesting. Okay, so we mentioned how big they are, and we've just been through what they, the enclosure sizes and all those things. Have you got plans? I'm assuming you do have plans to, because you said he's not quite fully grown yet. I'm assuming you have plans to keep building and build more sort of stuff. Is that on the works, in the works?
Yeah. So right now, at least with the limited amount of space that I currently have in the house that I'm in, I can't make his cage any larger. My wife and I are planning on moving out of state here within the next year, maybe two max. And when we do that and I transfer the cage, then I'll make it larger. What I'll probably do, just so it's not a major pain in the butt, is I plan to basically take this entire cage down and then put it inside of one of those portable tough sheds so I can transport it easily in the future anytime we move. It's not like a 1 week process to assemble everything, put it back up, and in the meantime, I basically have Zander homeless. The most I can do is like put him in the bathroom temporarily. So that's for as much effort as I have to put into building another big cage, it's a process, and I have to do it as quickly as possible. So it's exciting and dreadful at the same time for me to think about building another one and tearing this down and making improvements. But yeah, he'll definitely get a bigger one.
Yeah, cool. How long did it take you to make the one you're currently in?
A week plus multiple weekends for several months of just tweaking things.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like when you first build something, you're like, oh, this is going to work so well. And then your animal doesn't use it the way that you think they're going to use it. Yeah. And it's frustrating, because you're spending all this money. It's like, if you guys have ever seen those really giant cat wheels, and people buy them all the time and their cat never touches it. Or you buy them and it won't even sit on the tree, sit on your laptop right next to the table by the tree. That's the kind of frustration that you deal with a water monitor as well. So I've had to tweak a lot of things in the cage where, now he uses that, whereas before he wouldn't. And sometimes I'd have to lure him in with food to get him to use certain parts of the cage. And now he uses every part of the cage all day long, which is very rewarding. But it takes, it takes a lot of time to train them. So
yeah. Okay. Well, whilst we're on the enclosure, I'm probably gonna end up hopping about loads with the questions on this, to be honest, because I've got so many. But whilst we're on the enclosure, in terms of the water that you've got for him, because obviously, like you said, they're water monitors. They will hunt fish. and amphibians and things like that. So they will often use the water. How much water have you got in there, and how often do you change it and do all those sorts of routine things with that?
Let's just go to the filter then, and I'll show you. So here is our aquarium. This is a plywood aquarium. It's technically kind of a dangerous build because there's so many things that can go wrong, and most people don't want to build an aquarium out of wood, but it can save you a lot of money. So there's 500 gallons of water in here.
Yeah.
The way that I set up is I just have a slow kind of waterfall in the back. You guys can see this little black drain is where the water gets drained out to the filter that's on the other side. And one of these PVC pipes that goes all the way down to the bottom is where it gets shot back in. And it kind of creates like a little swirl effect. So this, I mean, I'll just be honest, like I'm not the all-be-all expert for aquariums. In many ways, it doesn't make sense to put the drain at the top. It's better the drain's at the bottom. But whether it's a gravity-fed filter or a pump-fed filter, there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. This is just how I happen to do it. So I'm always, here to give people education on water monitors. I'm not here to say I'm an expert on aquariums. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like on the other side. I do water changes. Let me turn on the lights back here first. There we go. So I do water changes every like 3 months. And this barrel right here is like a 55-gallon barrel. The way that it works is the water comes out, and this is just fed by gravity, and it goes through a multi-level filter system. So like I'll pull one of these off just so you guys can kind of get a better look at it. But it's basically PVC zip ties in a fabric that you can buy at any fabric store, and this just catches all the nasty stuff that I don't want to get into the filter. There's several layers of that. Then further down, which you guys really won't be able to see, I have, let's see, we have a lot of layers. We have a couple hundred bio balls, which are just plastic balls that filter. We have charcoal pellets, which help keeping algae from blooming because it's a lot of water, and monitors typically defecate in the water. So you got to keep as clean as possible. It's not uncommon for an Asian water monitor to get giardia. It doesn't hit us like humans do, where it's like the worst thing ever, and we're on the can and we're having the runs. It's not like that for a water monitor. It's not even noticeable to them, but that is common. So we have the charcoal pellets, and we have further down here the water. It goes through more layers of filtering, and then the pump, which is this tiny little guy, which is pretty impressive.
That is amazing.
This tiny little guy does 500 gallons. It's pretty great. So that cool. Will suck the water through this PVC. Comes up. We have a little valve, which allows me, like when I'm draining the aquarium and cleaning all this stuff out, I can shut the valve so it keeps the water primed. Because otherwise I physically get in the cage and then stick a hose like in a certain section and blast it in there, and it's freezing water, so I have to get in my swim trunks. It's really frustrating. So I use this. The water gets pushed through this PVC into this aqua blue black light filter, and this kills the bacteria. I actually had to add this to his cage after I had done the first build for the aquarium because I was getting a massive algae bloom, and the pellets by themselves couldn't kill it. So once I added the black light, it killed it immediately. I just did a water change, started from scratch. So my water bills go up from having an aquarium like this. My electric bill, that's definitely like big added costs on top of food. And that does a really great job. So this thing's pretty cool. It's a couple $100. I think it's like $250. There's like a little cleaning rod for it that will go back in and out. But anyway, the water continues through here, kills all the bacteria, and then it goes into a splitter. To the left is the waterfall. And we can, control how much flow of water is going in there if we want it to spray out or just drip out. And the rest of this is kind of a kludge right here, but the one in the middle is the only one that I'm actually using right now because I have other plans to add a second pump just to create more water flow. And this is the digital reader we can use to control how strong the water is flowing. So 65 out of 100. If I want it to shoot out really fast, I can amp them up to like 85 or 95. And that's pretty much it for the filter itself. So I got to clean these racks out. I do it monthly. Like I said, I do the full water change where I drain like 90% of the water. I do that every 3 months. The substrate I swap out like every 6 months, give or take.
Yeah.
And bulbs just last as long as they can. I actually have it just broke, so I just ordered another one. But here I have a UVA UVB bulb.
Okay.
That helps with water monitor growth as well. They're UVA and UVB is kind of weird with water monitors. It's said that they can get all the nutrients required from the food that they eat as long as they have like a wide varied diet.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like having UVA UVB light helps. There's no reason not to have it, even though they're studying necessary. It's like you're spending thousands of dollars to take care of these guys. You might as well just do everything you're supposed to do. So like I said, I just ordered that, but it'll come in here in a little bit.
Yeah.
What other questions you got?
Oh, loads. So many. Okay, let's talk about Zander himself for a little bit then. So in terms of, like you mentioned, in the wild they're going to be quite aggressive. Do you know how long his tail actually is?
Ooh, good question. Let's find out.
I
Let's
mean,
measure.
it's amazing the size of their tail compared to their body. They are absolutely huge, and obviously it's really useful for swimming and things like that. But it is genuinely incredible to see just how long it is. You know, look at that; it's unbelievable.
Let's find out. All right, this is going to be as close as we can get. So, he's going to start moving. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to guess 48 inches at least.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
Because that's what this guy goes to, the 48th inch. And right now, it's hard to measure it because he's always like curling up his tail. But I've done it before. I mean, it's got to be all of 4 feet.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. That's crazy.
Because it's longer than half of his body.
Yeah. So has he ever whipped it at you?
Oh yeah. Whenever, as I mentioned earlier, I got him when he was 2 months old, so he's a little baby.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, the way it works in captive bred and born monitors is they're socialized from birth. If it's a really good breeder, meaning that hands are touching them as soon as they get out of the egg, and that's what they know. Versus a monitor in the wild, all they know is fight or flight. Everything wants to kill me, so run and kill things that are tinier than you, right? In captivity, they're feeling human affection and emotions immediately. So multiple times a day, hands are touching them, they're around other monitors, they're being socialized, so that when you get a guy that's 5 years old and massive like Zander, he doesn't care if my hand is right next to his face. You know, he knows if I wiggle it, this isn't food. I can touch his face. I can grab his tongue. You know, I can touch his arms, his fingers, his tail, his leg. He doesn't care. Yeah. But you know, it takes a lot of time to get there. So whenever I was first taking care of Zander, there were many times where I might have approached him too quickly, or I hadn't given enough repetition over literally weeks and months of interacting with him.
Yeah.
And I approached too quickly where the trust wasn't quite there yet, even though he's socialized, and he'll whip. So I've probably been tail whipped maybe 4 or 5 times in the 5 years I've had him, which is pretty good. In general, the only way that I've been able to keep that number really low is I really pay attention to the body language, which is really important. Like, it's impossible to train these guys and socialize them if you don't know what their body language is. So I can show you guys just a couple of examples. The primary thing you got to look for on a water monitor body language is the tongue flicking. So if the tongue is flicking, it's basically showing like brain activity up here, and they're monitoring what's going on.
Yeah.
So if I come in the cage and this was like a brand new monitor I'd never been around, whether it's socialized or not, the tongue is probably not going to flick for a long time. Once I get the tongue flick, then I can start approaching. If the tongue flick stops, then I wait. So that literally means that for, oh Lord, who knows how long, probably for the first 2 months that I had Zander, I would open his cage and kind of just talk to him and put my hand in the cage and not touch him, like at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
until I could gain more and more trust. And then eventually I'd get closer to touching him, and eventually I'd actually touch him, and then eventually I'd give him a rubs, and that's like months and months and months and months and months of time. But it depends, because just like every dog or cat has a different personality, so do water monitors.
Yeah.
I lucked out and I got a monitor that was more chill, quicker than a lot of other owners that I know that have them. So in general, people should expect, if they're even considering having a pet like this, that they're going to spend months and years to get him to the point where you can interact like with them, just like a dog or a cat. They're
Yeah.
affectionate even. I lucked out and that happened significantly faster than I was expecting. But
Okay.
that's like one example. If their throat's puffing up, you got to back off. If their tail is curling, you're about to get whipped, you got to back off. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of like give and take, and patience it's a lot of patience required to be able to train them. But
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the main ones.
Yeah. So you mentioned his weight earlier. And there were a couple of things you mentioned earlier. The first one is his weight, and the next question is actually kind of related to that. So how do you, logistically wise, how do you weigh him? Because, humans step on a scale and it tells you a number, but he's not really going to be stepping on a scale anytime soon. He's just too big.
Yeah.
So how do you weigh him?
So it's kind of funny. Even the stepping on the scale, what I've done in the past, because he never will hold still. Like they don't hold still. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Zander is like that, but from the other breeders I've talked to, it's a thing. Generally speaking, I'll step on the scale, I'll weigh myself, I'll grab him. Hopefully he won't step him at all, which is the only way to get an accurate reading. Then we'll step on the scale together and I'll just do the difference.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I have a specialized vet herpetologist who handle reptiles that come and do home visits, because I can't exactly, now that he's this big, I can't just go put him in a box and take him into a pet clinic when you're taking in your tiny little chihuahua and he wants to eat it, right? You're not going to feel comfortable. He's not going to feel comfortable. So I have enough time, which makes more sense. And when we did this last, he was 46 pounds and change. But the previous time that I had weighed him on my own scale, he was like 52. So I don't know if maybe he ate a ton of food that day or he was just wiggling too much where the scale wasn't accurate. But from the last time we did it, it's 46, and he wasn't moving during the 5 seconds we were getting that number for. That's
Yeah.
how I've done it. Whenever they're much smaller, it's a heck of a lot easier to weigh
Oh
them.
yeah. Yeah.
You could probably just put him in a tiny bin and tear the scale so it doesn't count that weight, and then just throw him in there. And you'll probably be fine, but yeah.
That was actually my next question about the vet, because as you said, I can't imagine you walking into a place with this like huge 6-foot long box trying to carry it into a vet office and be like, yeah, I just want to check up on my monitor, just be pretty mental. So you get a guy to come out and do it for you then. What kind of checks does he or she do?
So not a lot, to be honest, because typically you're just looking for a clean bill of health, and I haven't ever had any issues keeping Zander. So generally speaking, what they're going to do is they're going to look at, number one, like, does the cage provide everything that you need to properly take care of an exotic reptile?
Yeah.
Heat, cold, they're going to ask, what are you feeding them? They're going to make sure that that's a wide variety. You're not just feeding them one thing every single time, because that's not good for their digestive tract, because they're very different from a human's. Water monitor, for any of you guys that do not know, this is not common knowledge at all. They do not have a bladder, so they defecate and urinate at the same time. There's no separation of one from the other.
Wow.
It's weird and it's gross. It's super nasty. They take massive turds. His turds are bigger than my huskies. So
wow.
it's a lot of work to do that. But they're looking for that kind of stuff. They're looking for scale rot, which is a common thing in the reptile trade. If a the environment, temperature and humidity is not doing the things that it needs to be doing.
Yeah.
If, you know, someone is constantly peeling off live skin that's, well, dead skin that's attached to live skin, and, you know, it's like someone who bites their nails or someone that gets a sunburn and they want to peel it. Like, it's just so hard to turn that switch off. You're not supposed to do that with a water monitor, right?
Yeah.
So that could lead to scale rot. They're looking for, you know, their teeth. Is there bacteria built up in their mouth? Is there too much saliva? Respiratory infections are super common in reptiles, not just water monitors specifically. So you're looking for signs of that: wheezing, sneezing, coughing type stuff. And Zander doesn't have any of those issues. He's he's as healthy as you can get. Weight, the one thing I will tell you about, like, health though, weight does factor into that. A lot of people that have these reptiles or similar types of monitors, because there's other monitors that get as heavy, like a black throat monitor would be another good example. They can get to 70 pounds when they're full grown or more. Same thing with an Asian water monitor. A lot of people get these types of reptiles and they think, oh, I want to get it as massive as possible because I want this giant dragon, you know, and it's kind of like who can get the biggest pig at the fair. It's like prestige in a way, but the reality is they're not going to live as long if they get this big, just like a human wouldn't if we're overweight or obese. So the easiest way that you can tell is if a monitor is overweight is this piece of skin right on the side of the stomach. If they have enough skin where you can pinch, where often you'll honestly just see like a flap. Like right now, it's kind of just staying just a little bit. As long as you have that kind of piece, that flap, you're fine. A lot of obese monitors, you couldn't pinch their skin. They're too full from all the food that they're eating. But eating part of these houses.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool. Okay. So in terms of feeding and all of those sorts of things, how often do you feed him, and what sort of things do you feed him? I know you mentioned earlier, but let's go into a bit more detail about what you feed him, that sort of thing.
So let's get out of here and I'll show you his main source of food right now. Getting a crock pot down for my wife earlier, so around my garage. But so here's my deep freezer. This is specifically for Xander's food. My wife got really sick of me having dead rats in our regular freezers. It was necessary to have a happy marriage. So we got large rats. I buy them in bulk on a website online that ships them to me overseas. We have quail. Week-old quail. The feathers on the birds that you feed water monitors are really important for cleaning out their digestive system. So this is like a really, really good part of their staple diet for a lot of birds in the wild. This is not a good example of like really, really healthy fish, but these are just fish fillets. They eat a lot of fish in the wild. I have frozen crawfish in here. It's kind of hard to see, I guess, but there's crawfish. The general, what do I feed them is a ton of meat from rats, you know, birds, fish. I do hard-boiled eggs as a treat. He loves hard-boiled eggs in the wild. They're often raiding nests of birds or other amphibians or other reptiles, like let's say an alligator or a crocodile, for example. They bury their eggs in the dirt, in the sand, next to wherever their nest is, and it's very common for monitors to go in and smell them. Same idea. They can locate things. Or they'll try to kill a baby alligator or something. They do all kinds of stuff. But as long as monitor keeper is giving them the full variety of what types of food they need, that's good. The only random thing I would say about food is that if you're feeding fish, the one thing you want to avoid is a
I think it's an enzyme. It's called thiominase, and it's in a lot of different breeds of fish all around the world. And you do not want to feed those types of fish because it toxicity levels that is harmful to reptiles. So thiominase is the term you want to look up. You can easily go on Google and type in what types of fish have or don't have thiominase, and then you just don't feed them the ones that have that. Catfish is a good example. Catfish has a lot of thiominase. Goldfish have a lot of thiominase. I don't feed those to Zander, so that way we keep them healthy. So typically I stick with tilapia, salmon, cod, rainbow trout. Those are all really good. They don't have high levels or even low levels of thiominase. So that's just kind of like a pro tip not a lot of people know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's really cool. Another question I had on the Instagram thing I did was what's your opinion on kind of live feeding? Have you ever done live feeding? Here in the UK, you're not actually allowed to live feed any
Good,
reptiles.
good. That's awesome.
And yeah, so what's your kind of opinion? Because I saw a video on Instagram recently actually of a guy, I don't know if it's a guy, someone fed their tegu a live mouse, and I was like, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you're against that.
I don't like food. There are a lot of reasons to do it or not to do it. The specific reason that I don't like food is it's not safe for the monitor. So at the end of the day, the food that I give Zander, that's not my pet, right? Zander's my pet, so he's my top priority. Is is it the morality always comes into question there, which is a touchy subject. Is it moral to be live feeding? I don't think that particularly is the important part for why I don't do it. It's just safety. So, for example, if I gave Zander a large rat, because he's a big reptile, I'm not going to give him a tiny kooky nest, right? A kooky nest, he's not going to care about. It's impossible to injure him. But I'm giving him a big rat. And you guys have probably seen videos on the internet of rats fighting for their lives and
Yeah.
attacking snakes that are 20 times the size of them and attacking lizards.
These guys look like ferocious creatures, which technically they can be, but that doesn't mean all of them are. Just like certain dog breeds are more aggressive, but that doesn't make all of those dogs that are that breed aggressive. It doesn't make all of them bad. And that's kind of like the mentality that I have.
Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. Okay. So with all this food that we're feeding him and all that sort of thing, I had a couple of questions on the Instagram about his poop and all those sorts of things, and you already mentioned how big it is. So how do you use like a poop scooper for it? How often do you have to like change it, and like is you have to step on it or anything like that? Is it really bad, or is it kind of manageable?
It's not that bad. Hold on 1 second. Babe, can you turn the phone chargers if my phone's gonna die? I don't want the interview to just crap on us. We hit like 4%. My phone's flashing at me, so pause for technical
No
difficulties.
worries.
It's disgusting for sure. It's absolutely disgusting to clean it up, but it's not challenging. I have a dustpan and a small little I want to say broom. I can't think of the word just off the top of my head. Just a tiny little dustpan, brush, basically. Like a brush is what the word I'm looking for. I just use that to clean it up, or I'll just put on gloves. Like I basically have shit gloves that I put on. I grab it up, I throw it away. A lot of these. We don't have any portable batteries though, because I can't just plug it in. What happened to our portable? Oh, sorry. Apologies. No, I'm just talking about the portable battery. Okay, go. Turn off timer. So, yeah, the poop scooper works pretty well. A lot of the time, Zander's going to defecate in the water. So that's just me doing maintenance on the filter and cleaning out the racks that I showed you that I use. But I would say at least every other day, thank you, I am cleaning up poop that's in my walking area. For whatever reason, Zander really loves to take a dump where I walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you. All right, now my phone is saying it's 0% battery, so I might just plug this into an actual wall. Just so
oh dear. All right. After a brief phone situation, we are back.
We're back.
So, where were we?
We were talking about poop.
Yes, of course we were. Why wouldn't we be?
The best
okay, yeah. So, you do have a poop scoop there, and you have the shit gloves. I love it. That's so funny. So, in terms of like your daily routine, what sort of how long does it take? What sort of things do you do?
Oh gosh. I would say walk in the cage, check the humidifier levels. If I need to fill them up with water, I fill them up with water. I have to at least fill them up once a day because they're a gallon each. So I bought 2 5-gallon jugs that I just fill up with filtered water at the store from those 30-cent dispensers. So I go in there, fill those up, make sure there isn't an obscene amount of calcium building on it, which once I switched to the filtered water, it kind of stopped the calcium buildup.
Yeah.
Looking for turds, cleaning up turds. I'm checking that the electricity is working. So in the time I've lived in this house with my wife, we've had, babe, what, 2 blackouts or 3?
At least 5.
At least 5. Okay, apparently I wasn't
Wow.
counting. At least 5. So 5 blackouts here in a couple of years. And that meant that the water pump shut off and the primer wasn't, like the valve that I was explaining that we use for the primer wasn't used. And the pump is dry heaving for one.
Oh, no.
And the heat, which is like the most important part of his cage, might not be functioning. So I have to go in and make sure that's correct every time. Make sure like a bulb didn't explode or break. You'd be surprised how destructive water monitors are. If that does happen, like I gotta do damage control, gotta clean up glass, I gotta make sure Zander didn't get cut. What else am I doing for maintenance? Humidity is a big thing, making sure that it's in the right level. I spray down the cage at least once a day, sometimes twice. Those are the main ones. Making sure there's no issues with the pump or the filter.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Those would be the main ones.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna switch topics a little bit. As I mentioned, this is gonna keep changing because I have so many different questions. So in terms of taming him, in my kind of experience, my very extremely limited experience of water monitors, well, it's basically no experience with water monitors except I've seen one. I
Yeah.
work in the same place where there is one, and it's just a baby. So you know, how did you mentioned how you tamed him? It must make it much easier for you to do all of these maintenance jobs with him being so tame as he is now, rather than being really aggressive all the time, sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So in terms of like, you mentioned it took months, I guess years to tame him down properly.
Yeah. I would tell anyone you expect years, and if it's sooner, you got lucky.
Yeah. It's really cool. They're such amazing animals. So something I wanted to ask actually about brumation. So for someone listening that doesn't really do that much about reptiles, brumation is kind of like hibernation for reptiles, and it's really useful for them for breeding. So although I thought, in Southeast Asia maybe you wouldn't even need to brumate him, because boas and retics and things like that don't get brumated.
Yeah.
But do you have breeding plans for him? Do you have any kind of cycling that you do in terms of that?
Yeah, good question. As of right now, the short-term answer is I don't have any breeding plans for him, which, like, in my mind, short-term is like 5 years. Next 5 years, absolutely not plan to breed him.
Yeah.
Having one water monitor is a lot of work. I don't want to have two right now. The flip side of that is in years in the future, because like I said, if he's only 5 years old now, the goal is to get him another 20 years. I would feel very accomplished as a first-time water monitor keeper. If he hit 25, I would throw a party. It would be nuts. I'd be ecstatic. Over the course of that time, would I be open to breeding him? Yeah, for sure. And the main reason why is like they're just so cool and so fun to take care of, and go through that process when they're like this big to when they're 50, 60, 70 pounds, and I could barely pick them up. So a part of that is also you can interbreed different species of monitor, which is really cool. So there's projects going on where crocodile monitors and water monitors have breeding projects now. I don't think I've heard of anyone doing that with a black throat or a white throat monitor, but my favorite monitor is actually a Kuminji monitor, a Kumingai. They're the exact same type of monitor that Zander is, but they're all yellow and orange. So you have like a common mark. Like I'll show you with his face. I get the camera. The black stripe that's on the side of his head right here. Yeah. That's like the distinct mark that water monitors have. On a Kuminji water monitor, it would be like pitch black and then bright yellow and orange everywhere else. Wow. And they're just gorgeous. So if I did ever breed him, I would definitely breed him with either a Kuminji monitor or just a black dragon. So there's black throats, which is a totally different species. A black dragon is simply completely pitch black from tip of his nose to the tail. They have no color but black on them, and they're very beautiful as well. Yeah. So if I was going to do a breeding project, whether I was just getting into that as a fun hobby and I wanted to restart the 25-year process commitment, or I was going to do it to sell them as pets, I would go with one of those two, just because I would like to have some really cool genetics within the babies. Yeah. And even then, it might not come out the way you want it to. You could breed them with a Kumingi or black dragon, and they come out exactly looking like Zander. Sometimes it takes generations to do that, just from the breeders that I've talked to. So it would be really cool, but I mean, it's a big commitment, man. I mean, if like I mentioned earlier, like I'm married, you guys probably heard my wife in the other room. Like we want to have kids. Legally speaking, I'm responsible for a child until they're 18. I have to take care of him for 25 years. Like, it's a big commitment. It's a really big commitment. So obviously that shouldn't really be comparable, but sarcastic purposes, you guys get the point.
That's brilliant. Okay, cool. So, mentioning kids, my love of reptiles came from a birthday party that my parents through me where I got a bearded dragon put on me, and there was snakes and stuff, and I was like, this is amazing.
Nice. Yeah, bearded dragon.
When I was really young. So what about yourself? Where did the kind of love for reptiles start, and then how did you kind of get into keeping something as big as Asian water monitors?
My mom was where it started. So growing up, my mom always had reptiles. Snakes was like our go-to. So I've grown up with ball pythons, bull snakes, corn snakes, bearded dragons, Chinese water dragons.
Oh, they're
not
cool.
to be
Yeah.
mistaken for an Asian water monitor. Very different species.
much smaller.
Yes. Horny toads. What else have we had? I've had turtles, if you can count that.
Definitely, yeah.
So that was kind of like the trajectory. Is I was always having more and more reptiles over time. Generally speaking, I never cared for more than two. I'm always crazy impressed by like folks that I follow on Instagram, because I don't follow a lot of accounts because I'm super picky. I follow some accounts and they have like 50 reptiles, and I'm like, how do you guys do this? You know, like I have one. I'm overwhelmed. You know, so I always give props to them, because at least for the accounts that I do follow, they do a really good job. It's not like a hoarder meets, you know, owning pets and then neglecting all these pets. I mean, they're like really doing a good job, and they do educational accounts too. So that part's really cool. But the first like big step that I took in the direction of having like exotic reptiles was my roommates. When I graduated high school, got a house together with a bunch of good friends, and my roommate wanted a snake, because I had a snake at the time, a really, really tiny corn snake. And he's like, oh, I want one. So he went on Craigslist and bought a ball python, which turned out to be a Burmese python, because either the breeder was lying and was knowledgeable that it was a Burm and just trying to get rid of it, because sometimes they're very hard to sell, or they're just completely uneducated and had no idea what they're doing. So he bought what he thought was a ball python, which is supposed to get like 4-5 feet max, you know, and they're like this big around. They cuddle in your hand, like you can hold them in your hand. And a Burmese python, for those of you viewers that do not know, is the second largest snake in the world behind the anaconda and reticulated pythons. Females get over 20 feet long, they can get over 300 pounds, and they're literally man eaters.
That is so funny.
So just like not all giant snakes are man eaters, you know, mine was not quite, but he got really overwhelmed by that, and I was like, I'll take care of it, dude, no worries, you know.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't do the research. I just knew I could care for that snake better than he could, and he agreed. He's like, you take him. And I took care of her for 5 years, and we got her when she was like as thick as my pinky and maybe 9 inches long. And in 5 years, she was 11 feet, 115 pounds. And it was a female. We found out it was a female, which means she would get 20, 23 feet long in another 10 years, 15 years, you know. Wow. So I took care of her for 5 years. The reason we ended up getting rid of her is 2 parts, like long story short. One, it started getting intimidating to own her because she was friendly, but not friendly all the time. Yeah. And 2, all of my family members started like having, it sounds insane, but my mom and my brother started having like dreams that would happen over the course of these 5 years. And they'd be like, your snake killed your wife and ate her, or killed some dog and ate the dog, like it killed you. They kept having like, you need to get rid of that snake. And then after that, I went to college out of state for a year, and they didn't allow any pets. I can't hide a 10-foot python. So my mom took care of it because she's a badass. And while I was away, they attacked my mom. And like she was alone in the house, bit her in the wrist, wrapped around her legs. I mean, it was like a fight. It was a thing. Whoa. She easily could have died. And she got away. Everything was okay, long story short. But that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. We're like, okay, it's time. So I did a lot of research for different breeders that were in the area that were interested in having another Burmese. They already had their own, and they wanted to do breeding projects, and she's a female. It was really beautiful. So I sold her to a breeder, and that's where she's been. But that was like me dabbling my toes in the exotic reptile trade, and it
Yeah.
didn't go well. Like a lot of people could have been in the same scenario, and it would have been way worse.
Yeah.
You know, at the end
Well,
of the
that's the
day, it
thing.
attacks my mom. You know, that
Yeah.
shit happens. People die. People
Yeah.
die.
Well, someone recently, I think it was in the US actually, died. The news kind of sensationalized it and made it really annoying. We're like, oh, no one should keep reptiles, but she
Yeah.
died because a snake. I don't know what snake it was. I'm kind of half assuming it was a ball python, but I'm not sure they can actually kill someone.
No. So, like, if I had to bet, like 9 out of 10 of the fatalities in or out of the United States come from reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, or anacondas. Those are like the 3 biggest that all get over 20 feet.
Yeah. That's the thing, though. Like you said, these guys aren't man-eaters. It's a food response, and I'm sure Zander has a pretty big food response.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a case of, like you said, the Burmese bit your mum on the wrist and then wrapped around her legs, and that's obviously what snakes do. They bite, then they wrap their bodies around and constrict. Well, if they're not venomous, and he's so pretty. That's amazing.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, that's so amazing.
Just saying what's up. The funny thing is his tongue is touch sensitive to the screen, so it's like moving around my camera on my end.
That's so cool. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, because these snakes they think they see warmth and they think they see food, but they're not actually going to eat that human. Like the person that got killed recently didn't get eaten by a snake. She just died because the snake thought she was food, constricted around her neck probably, and then that was that. But like you say, these giant snake species are dangerous. But Zander's dangerous as well because of those huge claws. Whenever I see monitor keepers on Instagram, they're always talking about how their arms get really cut up because they just have such big claws. Do you ever trim the nails or anything like that?
So I used to have to do that before I built this cage that we're in. Let me see if I can switch the camera. So I'll put his hand and claws into perspective here. But I mean, he's got a big hand on him.
Yeah.
The claws are very sharp, but this is way more dull than any other time I've had him in previous cages. The reason being is he's climbing up and down these pillars, like just straight up and down the pillar. He climbs this area up and down.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of climbing in his cage, a lot of digging. There's a lot of levolution, which is why I build the cages tall, because it naturally files the nails down, and I don't have to. In the past, I had to trim his nails weekly, and I would get shredded. I mean, I have scars on my arms from that exact same thing. Like looking back, if I could have done it differently, I mean, I tell people on the internet when I do, videos about the claws, for example, and I'm like, hey, put on some pretty intense gloves that you would use for holding one of those birds of prey, because it is necessary. If you don't like scars, don't let them climb on you. The cheap version of that is wear a hoodie, wear thick sweatpants, because I can't tell you how many clothes I've owned that got crazy tears in them from Zander climbing on me. So I kind of have like my go-to shitty clothes that are just comfortable, and I basically still keep them around so Zander can beat them up and climb on me occasionally, and I'm not going to get shredded. But it is something you have to be careful with. I would say it's a pro tip. I don't know if this is helpful to all water monitors, but I clipped Zander's nails when he was in the tub. Before I built him this big cage, I used to put him in the tub every day, and I'd spend like an hour with him, and I'd feed him in the tub. That was kind of like our bonding time when I come home from work. And when he was, because they're so inquisitive, they see like little tiny clippers, and they're like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And they're always moving, and it's like impossible to trim their nails. It's like a two-man job. Yeah. And the average spouse, wife, friend is not going to be cool with like pinning down one of these things to clip them. So I would do it when he was in the water, and he didn't really pay attention to what was below him in the water, and he was much more calm. So that was just like a thing that I did to successfully keep them down to the trim levels they needed to be, where it was, not like a velociraptor grabbing me, But it was an effective way to do it. It worked for me. I think to each his own. I'm sure there's a million other ways to do it, but
that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, so on that kind of note of talk about family and things like that, I'm guessing if you guys go away, and you and your wife, if you go away on a holiday or something, does your mum look after look after Zander?
So my mom is one of the go-tos. I have another good friend that's a good go-to. He's actually taken care of Zander several times. We take care of his dog anytime he goes out of town.
Oh, okay, cool.
You definitely can't just have anyone
Yeah, I was
do
gonna
it.
say,
So
like, it must be tough, you know?
yeah, it's tough. Plus, we have other animals. So, like, when we go out of town, you're not just taking care of a water monitor and doing all the things that I was explaining earlier. We have a Bengal cat and we have a husky, and they're very high maintenance as far as dogs and cats go. So it's not easy. But luckily, we have a very close-knit family and friend group. We're very blessed to have people that not only do we trust, but are well-equipped to handle stuff. Like one time, we went out of the country because we travel out of the country every year at least once, sometimes twice. And we went on this one trip to last summer, actually, where while we were gone, there was some electrical issue where there was a blackout in the house.
Oh, wow.
And my friend had to figure out everything over the phone with me because it wasn't functioning the way it was supposed to. And for the most part, like, he knew exactly what to do. He owns a hot tub. He knows how pumps work and filters, and most of it he was able to fix before he even called me. But that would be like, if I had another person in that same scenario, it's like, okay, I just might lose 500 gallons of water while I'm away. And where does that go? Luckily, it's in my garage. You know, it's not in my house. It ruins all my wood floors. But there's a lot of scenarios that could go south quickly. And like I said, I've been very blessed. But yeah, the go-tos are Mom and a couple of my friends.
Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, well, switching up again, because like I said, this is why I don't do questions. Literally, this is why I normally.
It's good. I wouldn't have thought of all these. So
well, no, it's more because I get lost, and then I'm scrolling down my phone, and I've already asked half of these, but I can't remember how much we talked about and all that sort of thing. So, but it's going all right so far. So what are some of the kind of the misconceptions of keeping Asian water monitors that you've seen or heard about or anything like that?
Biggest misconception is that anyone can own them. That is not true.
Yeah.
Anyone can poorly take care of them, and anyone can take care of a baby water monitor. Very few people can take care of an adult. And all babies, if you're taking care of them, will turn into adults. So the biggest one is like it's not quite the shock and awe factor we were talking about when it comes to food, like live feedings. But at the end of the day, it's not a common animal. Most of the time, you're only going to see these guys in a zoo. Yeah. Unless you live in Asia, you're only going to see it in the zoo or on the internet. And when you see them, you're like, oh my God, that's huge. That looks awesome. It's like having a dinosaur. And that's why we call them urban dinosaurs. Like, that's a thing in the reptile community. But they're like, oh, that looks so cool. I want it. How do I get that? And it's like not the way that you want to start an interest in an exotic reptile. So it's not, there's nothing wrong with it technically, but the biggest misconception is they're like, oh, I want it. How do I get it? And they're not doing the research, and they're not reaching out to owners or breeders and saying like, hey, am I a good fit to take care of this reptile? Because 90% of the time or more, the answer is no. Yeah. But the problem is people aren't always reaching out, and they just go get one. And just like I got a Burmese python on accident from a friend, and I thought I would be a better keeper, I still wasn't fully prepared to take care of that animal for its 20+ year lifespan. And I had to learn from those mistakes. But I was fortunate where I could pass that off to someone who had multiple, burns that was in a breeding project and I could trust. Most people are just going to go flip that again on Craigslist like it was flipped on us, and then pass that off to someone else who's going to make the same mistakes. So it's that would probably be the big one, the like common misconception, because they're so tiny when you first get them. I mean, you could put them in a regular, the same gallon, terrarium that you would get for a bearded dragon. Yeah, you could put a baby Asian water monitor in.
That's the thing. I saw that on Facebook recently. Some woman, I'm on a number of reptile groups on Facebook, and some woman put a post up being like, I went to a reptile expo, and there was this really cute animal, but then everyone's telling me that it's really hard to take care of, but it's so small and it's really cute and it just eats like meat and stuff. And then I scrolled down a bit because it's quite a long post. Scrolled down a bit, and she put like 4 or 5 pictures at the end, and it was literally an Asian water monitor. And I The amount
Yeah.
there's like 1,000 comments being like, "You have seriously messed up here. You've just bought an animal because it looked cool and small. It's going to get like
Yep.
6 foot and it's going to be a monster if you don't train it," sort of thing. And she was like, "Oh, I think I made a mistake here." It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I would say another big common misconception is that so for one, at a reptile expo, I'll be clear to state this: reptile expos are not a bad thing in any way, but there are a couple of bad things associated with the trade. Typically, they're a traveling reptile expo, which means they're in and they're out. It's a sales game. They're trying to make money. They're trying to hustle and bounce.
Yeah.
Typically, you're never going to have customer support. If something goes wrong, it just goes wrong, and then you're SOL. So often in that particular part of the trade, those are almost always, there are very rare instances, and I cannot even think of one. They're almost always what you would call imported or wild captured water monitors.
Yeah.
So typically I literally went into the country, I took them out of their home, I brought them into some other country. They're stressed to the max, they're probably not eating, and they're super lethargic. So when I show you that said tiny, cute little water monitor, you're like, oh, it's so cute, it's so tamed. No, it's wild as hell. It's just traumatized more than it has ever been since the time it was born. And that's probably going to die.
Yeah.
Typically, the misconception is, oh, because it's chill and it's tiny and it's cute and it's holding in my hand, it's not running away. It's on its last leg. It's about to die.
Yeah.
That is super common. People go to these reptile shows, they buy one of those. They're ill-informed. They're not prepared to own one because they just buy a tiny little aquarium while they're there, like that woman did. A lot of people run into that same issue, and then they find out somehow through the internet, I am not prepared to adequately take care of this pet. So then they try to return it, and that expo doesn't exist because now they're in another state or another country, and they're just doing the game, and it repeats and it repeats. So that is one of the ways that, like, I guess just, negative misinformation gets spread around and people find out the hard way.
Yeah.
My tip to anyone that's considering most species of reptiles, that's not, just honestly most, even we'll look at a bearded dragon, for example. You should get them directly from a breeder. And in my opinion, no other source. Not from a pet shop, from a breeder. So should we support pet shops? Yeah, sure. Some of them are awesome. They really take care of them. They're really educating people and they're making a big impact on the community. And that's awesome. But specifically for exotic species, if you're getting it from any other source in a breeder, you're not doing your research. You're not doing the right thing. And if you, let's say, for example, I wanted to have a wild caught monitor. The only reason I would consider one, already owning one, is I wanted a more challenging second time go.
Yeah.
Which sounds insane because that's what it would be.
Yeah.
It's going to be significantly more challenging because they're not socialized from day one.
Yeah.
They're traumatized from day one. And then I'm trying to fix that. So if you like insane challenges, that would be my suggestion. Go that route. But anyone will tell you that owns a monitor, it's like, it's significantly harder. It's going to take, that's when they say, oh, it will take a decade to get them socialized.
Yeah.
That's true. They're not making that information up.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Jumping around again, away from the expos and all that kind of bad stuff. In terms of like the enrichment that you provide, because as we mentioned earlier, monitors are active hunters. They will search out their food. They're not like snakes. They don't stay in one place for hours on waiting for something to come along. They're going to go to their prey and try and catch it. They will swim for their prey, etc., etc. So in terms of like the enrichment that you provide, do you do anything in terms of trying to get him to search for his food or anything like that?
Gotta step out of his cage. So damn hot. Yeah. So the primary thing that I do for enrichment is I let him out in the front yard, which may sound a little crazy. Usually the first comments I get when I say things like that are like, well, what do your neighbors think of him? They love Zander because he's awesome. A lot of them bring over like their kids or their cousins when they're in town or when it's holidays. Like I'll get a text from my neighbors like, hey, can we bring your kids over and you feed Zander? And I'm like, yeah, sure, if I'm there. So number one, it would be get him outside of his normal environment because then he's in a totally new world. So he's very familiar with my front lawn and my backyard.
Yeah.
That's under strict supervision. I, at this point, have, I guess, a trust level with Zander where I know he's not going to go run off. But when I first started taking him in the outdoors, I had him harness trained. So I basically, I mean, they don't make water monitor harnesses. If they do, they're probably on Etsy, you know, some like random person that just makes water monitor harness. It's not a thing. So you got to go get like a double XL cat harness or a really small dog harness whenever they're smaller. And I would just have them on one of those extendable leashes.
Yeah.
You can't actually walk a water monitor. I know the internet really wants that to be a thing. Just like they want it to cohabitate with their dog in their living room. Like, that's just not safe. I've seen many people do it. It did not work out for me. But with the leash thing and the harness, like, you can't walk one. They walk you. The monitor just walks the Who Man around. That's what they call him on the internet. And usually when people see him in a park, they're like, oh, what is that? They're really caught off guard, but then they're curious and they want to come take a look. And then by the time that happens, I can just, you know, answer questions like we're doing right now, but I'm just going to give them the leash and like, you walk them. They're like, this is so cool, you know? So that's kind of like the enrichment for Zander. The other things that I've done when he's inside the cage is you can like hide food. So I'll bury some eggs in his substrate. Switching up things in the cage is a big thing. So just if I empty out all the substrate and I put in new substrate, he's 20 times as active for a month.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, what are all these new smells? This is new. This is a different piece of bark. Here's a new twig. I've never, like, he knows what's different.
Yeah.
Other than that, like changing things up with the food. So if you've seen any of the YouTube or like Instagram videos that I have when I feed him, I typically feed him the same way every time, where it's on a platter or it's on a plate or a bowl or whatever. I kind of just give it to him. Occasionally I'll take the tongs and I'll make him follow it around and kind of work for his food and climb up a pillar to get it. That's a little bit of enrichment. Sometimes what I can do is I can put a string or a rope and I'll tie it to the ceiling, and then I'll basically tie it around the animal and make him like jump up and eat it and like rip it apart like they would in the wild. Because he has to work to do it. There's other people that will buy like rubber contraptions where it's like a sphere, but it's got holes in it big enough for them to like put an arm through or their face, and then you can put the food, slip it inside, and it'll roll around in a ball. That's really good for enrichment too.
I've seen
those
that
are
with
like
tree monitors, I think it was. I saw that with tree monitors. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, amazing. Okay,
so those are good ways to do it.
Yeah. Okay, I think I am genuinely running out of questions now. A big one I had actually is about the research that you did before you got him. Because in a previous episodes I've done actually about reptiles and that sort of thing. A lot of what we talked about is about how before you get a reptile, you need to research a hell of a lot and have all the things set up before you get it, etc. And a bit like that woman that I talked about earlier, the problem was she'd seen it, thought it was cute, didn't know what it was, didn't have a setup, and then went on Facebook and asked, oh, what temp do I need? What humidity do I need? What do I feed it? And everyone was like, it's a water monitor. How are you? Like, you can do that with a royal python or a corn snake. They're like bomb proof. You can do that. You get away with it for a day or so. They'll survive. This is a water monitor, and you don't know what to do. And this thing's going to get like 6 foot long, and it's probably not going to like you very much because, as you mentioned, it's probably wild caught, and you probably have no idea how to tame it down properly. So it's going to absolutely hate you, and it's going to be 6 foot long, and it's going to try and, you know, all that sort of thing. So how much research did you do before you got him, and what sort of research was it? Was it looking on like Google Scholar to find scientific stuff, or was it more talking to the breeders, etc.?
Primarily it was reach out and directly contact breeders and owners. So for example, like one of the first things I did is I just did #watermonitor on Instagram. And then anytime I find an account where I could tell like they own multiple monitors, that's how I found breeders. Then I'd go under their followed list and I'd see who did they follow? Are they breeders? Do they own monitors? That's how I started. So the power of, the internet search is really, really helpful nowadays. I, over time, lucked out and found a local person here where I live that also has a water monitor. Crazy story, from the exact same breeder that I got mine from, one generation older. So
Wow.
there's another, Zander's actual genetic brother lives in the same city as me, which
That's
is
so
nuts.
cool. That is
And he's a
mental.
year older. He's like 10 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
He's maybe like another 7 inches longer. He's like, 7'6"
Yeah.
And so that's really cool. But lost my train of thought. We've just been talking so much.
That's all right. In terms of like
what did you ask again?
say again.
I was just saying, what did you ask again? Just like
In terms of like the research side of it, how much did you do? How long
Yeah.
did it take you to research all of that?
I want to say it was like 2 months. A large part of the research is really determining if you're a good fit for a water monitor.
Yeah.
So couple of things that I would highlight that I made my own checklist for, and then I was like, do I have that? Do I have that? Do I have that? One of those was, do you have the ability to build cages, or have a direct friend or relative who is really good at building cages? Because here we are, I mean, to put this in perspective, like if my buddy that has Zander's brother had a cage built by a professional when he bought his new house, and the cage was built into his mortgage. He spent $10,000 building the cage setup.
Oh my God.
10,000 US dollars, right? I'm probably like $4,000 in to him, all in on the cage, everything. It's probably like 4,000, and that's me saying, "Oh, I don't want to spend 10,000, or I don't have the ability to build this into a mortgage on a house payment. So how do I make this really expensive pet as affordable as possible?" For me, that's building my own stuff. So because my mom is like a female version of Bob the Builder. She's built all kinds of stuff. She's always doing house renovation. She always does all the work herself. She's crazy. She's a lot of fun, but she's a very talented woman. I never would have considered this reptile if I did not have my parents as go-tos to help me go through the process. Because I built a lot of stuff with her in the past, and she's taught me a lot of things. So family, I got lucky, because if you don't have a family or a friend, then that means you're going to pay a professional, and you got to have a shit ton of extra cash. So that would be one. Location and age is a big part of that too. So I mentioned earlier, when I had the snake, I was going through college, and I went out of state. For a while, I was going in college in state, no big deal, I take care of it. Then I went out of state, it didn't work. I could never care for a guy like this out of state. There's no way. I couldn't trust someone for a year or two or more to take care of a creature like this, because then that's their pet and their responsibility, and I'm being a bad owner. I shouldn't have done that in the first place. So a lot of times younger people will reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, that's so cool. I'd really like to get an Asian water monitor someday." And I'm like, "Cool, that's great. I'm glad you're already saying someday, because now is not the time, because maybe they're 17 years old, or maybe they're 14, or maybe they're 20, and they're in their second year of college." And I'm like, this is not good for you right now in your life. But once your life's more stable, and after you've graduated and what you're doing, then that could be a really good option. There's other people that reach out to me like, "Hey, I'm not going to college. I've done all the research, blah, blah, blah. Do you think I'd be a good fit?" And I'm like, "Yes, but you need to fix this, this, and this." So there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. The primary tip that I would give is reach out to people that already own one. I mean, that's your best source. I mean, you can read as many articles as you want on the internet, or care sheets is probably the next top source. Like care sheets for water monitors written by monitor owners. I read 4 or 5 of them, and I'm actually working on like redistributing an updated version of an Asian water monitor care sheet to the internet, because one hasn't been done that I've been able to find for a while. And the one that I initially used to base my initial experience in prep work for owning one, it's no longer on the internet. So I have, to my knowledge, the only PDF file that I got directly from the owner of the company who I bought it from, that they're no longer in business. So I'm working on like tweaking and adding in a little bit additional information from what they have. And there's minor things here and there that they left out, and little details that people really like to see. And then once I have that completed, then I'll upload that on the internet, and hopefully more people can learn from that. But the care sheets are a really, really big one for sure.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I remember the question I had in terms of, because like I mentioned, where I work currently, there's a Philippine water monitor, just a baby. But
Yeah.
it's often like the shedding of the skin, like in a snake, it's all in one go, preferably. But how does shedding of the skin work for monitors?
I actually had some skin earlier. I just cleaned it before we did this video. I had
Yeah.
scales all over the dang place. The easiest way to describe it, it's the complete opposite of how a snake sheds. So just like
Yeah.
you're saying, all in one go, assuming that they're healthy and they have the humidity in the right, areas, and it just peels off.
Yeah.
Water monitor is constantly shedding in multiple places of their body based off of where they're growing the most.
Okay.
And it's little tiny flakes that over time become really, really big flakes. So Zander doesn't have, here's an example. Here is a tiny flake
Cool.
that just came off.
Yeah.
They'll be much, much larger. I mean, it's just right now he just did a big shed over the course of the last month. So he doesn't really have a lot of excess skin, but occasionally, I'll find chunks of skin that are that big.
Wow.
That are hanging off. And, the general idea is you shouldn't pull them off just as a go-to, because like I was describing earlier, it's really easy to just keep plucking and plucking and plucking. So if someone is going to pull dead skin off, the only really important thing they need to know is the second there's a tug, you stop.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that can lead to issues that could eventually lead to scale rot, and that's very hard to fix, and it's very painful for them. So that would be the main one.
Yeah.
But in general, just tons of little flakes that come off here and there.
Oh, that's really cool. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, I should have asked that, and oh, I could have asked this. So that's really annoying. But yeah, I'm currently out of questions for you. Your interrogation is finished. I think the only thing left to say is thank you so much for coming on. It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you.
For having us, man.
In terms of this video, I'm going to put it on YouTube if that's all right with you.
Good to go.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on YouTube, and then I'll put it onto the podcast, obviously, but I'll say for the best effect, you need to watch it on YouTube, because a lot of what we talk about is visual. So the main thing will be YouTube. If you didn't know already, I do have a YouTube channel for the podcast, but there's only one video up currently. So I'm going to add more and more videos, and then by the time this rolls around in a couple of weeks, that channel should be up and running fully, really, and then I can get this video out there, and hopefully we'll generate quite a good little bit of traffic, because this has been absolutely fantastic.
Sweet.
It's been an amazing look into what it's like to own one. And it's funny, I've always wanted to own one since I found out what they were. I've always wanted to own one. And it's really interesting that you were saying, is it the right time for you? Because for me, I'm 22. I've just come out of university. I'm going to be going into different jobs. I don't know where I'll be, So keeping one of those is not ideal, because my parents, although they love animals, we've got 2 dogs and stuff, they're not really prepared to care for a reptile like that. They'll spray down my gecko, but they won't. They won't feed a quail to a
geckos are awesome though.
Dragon,
those are cool reptiles.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I want one in the future, hopefully. And if my girlfriend's listening, she actually said, to be fair, she saw the one in work. She came to work with me, and she saw the one in our work. And because it is still pretty small, and he's yellow and black, and he looks amazing. It was like, oh, he's really cool. You can have one of them. I was like, oh, I can have one of them. She's not a fan of snakes, so I can't have a snake, which is really annoying. But she was a fan of this Asian water monitor. So maybe in the future I'll be able to get one of them. That'd be amazing.
I always tell folks, just as a heads up, there are over 70 species of monitors, and many of them are small their whole life. And that's perfect for people that even like the idea of the monitor. Because you just get the fairly small to adolescent size, and it's the same personality. They're almost as intelligent, and most of them are as intelligent. They're really cool, like a tree monitor. They're beautiful. Oh yeah. They're very different because they have way longer appendages, and their tail is way longer. yeah, there's a lot of cool ones out there. The only reason I mean, personally, like, I like the dragon aspect of, like, this is one of the largest lizards on the planet.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I picked an Asian water monitor. One of, versus a different type.
Yeah.
Because I've always been the guy that wanted to have, like, that giant creature. It's like, oh man, what is that? Like, that's kind of neat. If I had a dog, I would go with a Great Dane.
Yeah.
I want the big stuff. I'm
Yeah.
6'4", like I said. So you just got to find what's right for you. But I will say you're on the right track. And even if you do end up getting one, stability is really the main thing. If you have a good job and you think you're going to be there for a couple of years, if you do end up moving, just like I'm going to have to move out of state here in a couple of years for my wife, because she's planning to apply to vet school here within the next 12 months.
Yeah.
We don't have any vet schools here in the state, so we're going to have to move. That's going to be a big thing going through this, taking it down and then moving. But if Zander was 1 year old, it'd be a piece of cake. I would just take his cage and then I'd move it and it'd go in my bedroom, So, no, it's been a blast, though. Thanks for having us on. This is actually the first podcast we've done. So we've done television before with Zander, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to be on live TV. I've never done that. And it was very intimidating to do that with Zander. He's like, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, he's never done this. But
I can imagine.
Podcast, way more chill. I like it.
Yeah, it's much easier. I can edit stuff as well, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
Okay, sweet. Oh, he's absolutely incredible. What an animal. That is amazing. Okay, well, with this fantastic image that you're seeing right now, I will leave you all. As I mentioned, if you're not watching this on YouTube, please go and do that, because he is a beauty. It's amazing to see. So yeah, I'll leave you all to have a fantastic day, whatever it is that you're doing. Hope it goes well, and I hope you enjoyed this, because I certainly did. It was fantastic. And yeah, on that note, stay curious. I'll see you all in the future.